What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. What is going on, everybody? Hopefully, everyone's doing well. Recovered from a couple days off and realizing there is no football going on, and it sucks, but not as much. The reason I haven't done a podcast in a couple days is after New Orleans, I came back. I went to Waste Management on Friday, and I woke up Saturday morning thinking I was a little hungover, hurting a little bit. And then it just got worse and worse and worse. And then Sunday was awful. Monday was even worse. And I thought, don't I have immunity? I got the flu, whatever, 2 months ago. Aren't I good for the rest of the winter? And I guess my immunity, my immune system, because just jet setting around, having a few too many vodka sodas, uh, way too many. But God, they go down easy. And all of a sudden, I got hit again. I'm still not feeling great on Tuesday, but definitely way better than Sunday night with Colin. I was really struggling. I just lethargic, had no energy, and it was hard for me. I couldn't do a podcast yesterday. I was kind of bedridden all day. It sucks. I hate that feeling, but nothing you can do. You just kind of got to embrace it. Uh, has given me a lot of time though to soak in everyone's takes. I mean, I have seen every conceivable thought on the Eagles, their team building, how people are going to copy them, to Mahomes and his legacy and where he stands, and he's ruined and he's never catching Brady. And so I did just write down some thoughts, some overall thoughts on the Eagles, on the Chiefs, uh, and then there's just a lot of other stuff going on NFL wise. Um, I had mentioned last week that I rode on the plane with Deebo, and we got deplaned, and he was talking, and we were talking 49ers, and we were talking Purdy, and then it comes out a couple days later that on his farewell meeting to end the season that he had asked for a trade, and the Niners have given him, ability to seek a trade. Remember, back in the day, he had requested a trade, so it's not the first time that the Deebo has done this, but we will dive into some thoughts on that as well. Halftime show, seeing a million takes on the halftime show. It's like, guys, it's not that deep, but I guess I got to chime in on that as well. I did want to start with this because I have lived in Philadelphia. I moved there in 2010, and I lived in South Philadelphia. Probably, I mean, I don't know, a 5 minute bike ride to the facility, a 2 minute car ride, and then my second year, I lived downtown, very very close to the art museum, which are the steps that Rocky runs up. So I spent 24 months living in a city, coming from California, that I had never been to, and that honestly I didn't know that much about. And I found myself beside the winters, which are extremely cold, like all these northeast cities, finding myself loving the place. And a big reason for that was I love the people. And I think people of Philadelphia I could relate to. Kind of a chip on their shoulder. They viewed themselves as the underdog. And there was just, I don't know, there was an underlying toughness to the city that I really appreciated, that really resonated with me. I don't know if it was the way I grew up, the people I was around through my dad, uh, my friends and family growing up. Something about it just, I really, really, and still to this day, I admire the city of Philadelphia in terms of what the people stand for, the toughness, kind of the small business oriented operation, how so many generations have grown up and the close knit community. Big Dom has become such a fixture in football talk, but I do think he represents a lot of when you think about Philadelphia, like Dom knows everyone in the city. And I bet most people that have lived in the city of Philadelphia for several decades could play like 1 degree of separation to Dom DeSandro. And that can't be said like where I'm sitting right now in Scottsdale. That's not like that. Los Angeles is not like that. San Francisco is not like that. Vegas is not like that. And that's what you get in Philadelphia. And there was this ethos and this soul of we are a big, big underdog. We know it, we embrace it, and fuck it, let's roll. I think the problem for Philadelphia, who treats their football team, they love their sports. It is a great sports city. But the Eagles are held to a much higher regard in the city than the other teams. And that this was based on my experience in 2010, 11, and 12. In 2025, it ain't even close. The Eagles would be treated like they would treat Alabama football in Tuscaloosa or LSU football in Baton Rouge. And they love the Phillies. They probably don't really like the Sixers now, and they like the Flyers when they're good. But the Eagles are no longer the underdog. And a huge part, I think, of that mentality was we're not New York, the big number one market, the glamorous market, uh, a market where people aspire to move to and live, a city that is viewed in much higher regard than our city. And I personally, there was something that, growing up in Northern California, part of San Francisco that makes it pretty special. Definitely did when I was a kid going there a lot and living there in 2013 is for one of the major cities in the world. It is kind of small, and Philadelphia has that. Well, it's a big major market in America. It doesn't have like some overwhelming feel like New York. But you polled the average American to rank New York or Philadelphia, they would always rank New York ahead of Philadelphia. And think about Washington, D.C. I mean, that's where the president lives. So people always hold D.C. in a higher regard than Philadelphia. So they have like this chip. We're not as good as those other places. And like I said, that for whatever reason, I can relate to that. And I appreciate that. But when it comes to sports and when it comes to the National Football League, like you're no longer some little underdog. Like you're the top dog. You're the bully. You have not only one of the best owners in the National Football League, but I'd argue Jeffrey Lurie is now pretty well established as one of the best owners in all of professional sports, not just in America, but worldwide. Your general manager, I would say if you did a poll right now, he would clearly be the number one ranked general manager. And even on some of his bad years, he's a lock top two or three GM in the NFL. So you have an elite owner, you have an elite GM in a personnel based operation. And then we look at the quarterback and the coach like this is not the AFC. You're in the NFC, where if you remove Sean McVay, look at the playoff teams. Dan Quinn never won a Super Bowl as a head coach. Kevin O'Connell's never won a playoff game. Matt LaFleur hasn't won a Super Bowl. Kyle Shanahan's lost a couple. Dan Campbell, like, couldn't even win a playoff game this year against the Washington Commanders. So Sirianni, at the end of the day, and listen, I'm guilty of this. I've said some things that if I ever talked to him, I'd have to be honest and be like, listen, shut me up. He's a Super Bowl champ. Like, that ain't never changing. Same thing with the quarterback. Like, the quarterback has been a polarizing player, and we nitpick him. And that's what happens when you make $50 million. But holy shit, he played pretty well in that Super Bowl. He was awesome. And now that's two Super Bowls where he's been excellent. Where do we judge players? Very harshly in high leverage situations. And he's excelled. He's been good in the playoffs, and especially in the biggest game in the world. Definitely in America. He's been good in two Super Bowls, and now he's won one. So both of them put a ring on their finger. Like, what are you going to say? There's nothing you can say to them. So you look at this operation, their team is absolutely loaded with star players everywhere. They have the best running back in the NFL. They have the best offensive line in the NFL. They obviously have, potentially the best duo wide receiver in the NFL. They have probably the best young defensive lineman in the NFL in Jalen Carter. Probably the best young duo at corner with Cooper and Mitchell in the NFL at DB. Your team's just loaded. Like, you are kind of the Yankees now. And it's going to be interesting to see how they transition from like this little underdog, this little FU, watch us, wait till we prove you wrong, to like, yeah, you're just the best team in the league. And you're going to be consistently. And you're going to be a heavily favored team going into 2025 this fall. Why? Because most of your best players are young and under contract. And like I said, if you have an elite GM, yeah, Josh Sweat hits free agency, Milton Williams hits free agency. Maybe you figure out a way to keep Zach Bond, but you'll recoup. You'll make moves because that's what the Eagles do. And I just wonder how the city, whose soul is tied in to that mindset in life, because that's how it's always been. And it's true. And there was substance behind that. It's not like they faked it. They didn't need to. But now you can't hide from being the big dog. You've won 2 Super Bowls in 8 years. You've been to another. You're the powerhouse team in a conference or in a division that historically has been one of the most powerful divisions in football in terms of the business. The Giants, the Cowboys, you guys, like, you're the division that prints money for the league. For a long period of time, it was Cowboys Giants Sunday Night Football week 1. Why? Because that was going to be the highest rated game in early September. And it usually was. Well, now the Giants are a joke. The Cowboys have a lot of issues. And it feels like you're hitting your stride. So this notion that the Eagles, the little underdog, the little Rocky running up the steps, like, you guys are like Mike Tyson or Muhammad Ali. Who's scoring big in the NBA this season? You are. With the all-new ways to get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. From dunks to assists to rebounds, get behind your favorite player and the prop bets you can make on DraftKings, the home of NBA player props. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple, like picking how many points your favorite player will have. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook and make your first pick. First time? Here's something special just for you. New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Take it to the rack with DraftKings Sportsbook. Every point counts. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code JOHN, that's code JOHN, for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. The other thing that the franchise has always been defined by is having balls. And I think, I was just thinking about, they have been really, really good at knowing when to take big swings and doing things that are quote unquote controversial and having conviction and belief in it. And it's paid off huge during the Jeffrey Lurie ownership. People forget, but one of Andy Reid's first big moves as a head coach was he drafted Donovan McNabb. And it's a long time, and Donovan went on to have a really good career, making Pro Bowls and becoming a really, really good player. Pretty sure that got booed because everyone wanted Ricky Williams. Shows you how much times have changed in 25 years. If you didn't take the star running back over the star quarterback, fans were pissed. Safe to say that was the right move. But it kind of hit me, and I mentioned this to Colin on Sunday night. Like, think about the moment. There was I think probably in the third quarter when the Fox cameras went to Patrick Mahomes. And he's talking to Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz wasn't just the savior of the Eagles. He was the guy they were going to build around and compete to win championships with. Until they weren't. And they won a championship without him. And then things got weird. And then Howie Roseman drafted Jalen Hurts in the second round. People forget this. Even though Carson was struggling then, I would say universally, but specifically the people that cover the Eagles and former players, thought it was an insane move. I thought it was an insane move because I thought Jalen Hurts was never going to be able to play NFL quarterback. Not only was it the right move, it literally saved the franchise. Because you could trade Carson Wentz, which Howie would do a year later, and build around Jalen Hurts, which has led to 2 Super Bowl appearances in 3 years and a championship. Last year, when every human being alive, including probably Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman, thought like, we got to move on from Nick Sirianni. Somehow, usually they're aggressive and they pull the trigger. They were the same people, well, Howie not technically, but Jeffrey, that had Big Dom remove Chip Kelly from the building. That a couple years after Doug Peterson beat Belichick and Brady in the Super Bowl, fired him. And I think most of us thought, like, Sirianni's done. But they took a deep breath and they didn't make the move, which I'd argue was just as polarizing as all these other things. And they got him 2 coordinators, and Fangio came in after Miami and all the players thought that Vic Fangio was not only just an asshole, but didn't know what he was doing. Came in and kicked everyone's ass. So it's like, I would say one thing that defines the Jeffrey Lurie, Howie Roseman partnership, and this, I would say Andy Reid as well when he was there, was the franchise just has balls. You know, I say this all the time, like, it's easy to draft Caleb Williams #1 overall in late April. Every single human will give you an applause, including myself. I'm not acting like I'm any different. That's the easy thing to do. But you're not paid to do the easy thing. You're paid to get it right. And time will tell, and I'm not saying that we have that information. They still have a long runway to prove themselves. But Ryan Poles didn't even bring in Jaden Daniels to the building. Didn't even bring him in. Yet Adam Peters, with the #2 overall pick, when it was universally agreed upon Jaden's the second best prospect, brought the other 5 guys in together and took a lot of shit for it. Like, what are you doing? It's like, well, I'm doing my fucking job. That's what I'm doing. And I think one thing you see with the Eagles is like, their job is to not make everyone happy at the time of the move. Because when do these moves happen? They happen in January, February, in March, and in April. Games are played September through January. So it's like, you're going to make some things. No one cares what, and listen, I'm not trying to shit on this guy. I have nothing but respect for Mel Kiper. His draft grades don't mean anything. He'd give you an F if 3 years later, that guy's an all-pro for you, and no one's talking about that F. And I think the Eagles are just unafraid to do some things that most franchises just are not. And so when I see, like, how are you going to, and I used to do this, and they've gotten much more digital now, but Howie used to have whoever was in the Final Four, the 2 AFC teams and the 2 NFC teams, he'd have up in his office. And I would imagine he still has something similar to that somewhere in his office. It's probably digitally now, but like I said, I think I lost my train of thought, but about the team building. Is everyone's like, how do we build a team like the Eagles? I don't know, just hit on a bunch of sweet players. It's not like that complicated. Make some sweet moves to be in position to land some of those players. But the one thing that they will do that you probably won't do is, like, they'll do some things that people will be like, what the hell are they doing? Because that's usually what you have to do to be successful. I see people saying that all the time about people in business. It happens all the time. You get on the internet, it's like, oh, Elon Musk is a fucking idiot. Well, Google's net worth sure doesn't seem like that to me. But they've been saying that about people on the forefront of the business community forever. Whether it's Steve Jobs, whether it's Jeff Bezos, there are points and times in all of their career where everyone's like writing him off. Can't believe he did that. That's not going to work. And you have to make some of those moves where everyone on the outside goes, you're an idiot. That's going to get you fired. That ultimately make you a legend. And that's what happens inside the Philadelphia Eagles building a lot. This podcast is brought to you by Travis Matthew, apparel designed for confidence and comfort, no matter where the day takes you. You know where the day just took me? On a walk. It's like 48 degrees outside. I had my Travis Matthew sweatshirt on, had the hat on to keep my bald head warm, had to throw on the Travis Matthew vest. None of these products were even given to me. They were purchased a long time ago because I've been wearing this stuff forever. I swear by these products. I did not know, though, that they had this new age shoe. You can rock it, work out. You can wear it on a walk. You can wear it to a business meeting. It was originally crafted for elite runners, and the new age was adapted to more of a versatile wear. I plan on rocking this thing in New Orleans. I mean, look how good this thing looks. It's comfortable, looks good, sharp. I highly recommend it. So visit Travis Matthew for 20% on your first order. Look good, feel good, play good, and be comfortable. I've seen a lot of takes with the Kansas City Chiefs and Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. It's like, guys, the GOAT and the Tom Brady debate is fun, and I understand why it was happening. And listen, if he had won three straight, even if he never got to seven, I don't think three straight is one. If they couldn't pull it off, it's never happening. No one's ever winning three straight Super Bowls. We just saw how difficult it is. One, it's hard to even make it that far 3 straight years. It's hard enough to win back-to-back Super Bowls. But like, it's part of what makes sports fun is having these conversations. Because there is no right or wrong answer. Like, there is no actual place where I'll go to my deathbed thinking Michael Jordan is the best basketball player I've ever seen. But there are going to be people, especially younger generations, arguing for LeBron James. Probably people in Los Angeles that would say, hey, what about Kobe Bryant? There actually is no list. It doesn't exist anywhere. There's not like some room where it sits. So these conversations are just what drives our interest in sports. They're enjoyable to have. I loved Peyton Manning when I was in junior high and high school and early on in college. He couldn't beat the Patriots, and it wasn't looking good until finally he won a Super Bowl. And then he got to another. Then he went to Denver. And he went to another. And then he finally won another one. And all of a sudden he went to 4 Super Bowls and won a couple. Like, things in sports take time. But the thing with Patrick Mahomes, he played a shitty game. They got worked. It happens. It's happened to them before. It happened to them, obviously, Sunday. And it probably will happen to them again. But when you win 3 Super Bowls in 5 years, if Patrick Mahomes were to never play another game, he's had one of the greatest careers in the history of the sport. Multiple MVPs, 3 Super Bowls, and multiple Super Bowl MVPs. Guys like Terrell Davis and Kurt Warner got into the Hall of Fame with like little short bursts in their career. And obviously, when they were on, they were as good as any we've ever seen. Shannon's brother, Sterling, just made it to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, whose career was stopped early on. I think he didn't even make it to 29 years old because of a neck injury. Like, it happens. And part of football, I would say much more than these other sports, is injuries play such a big role. And so it's hard to go like, if Patrick Mahomes, who's going to be 30 years old, has another 10 years in him, let's say, it's hard to play that in football because you never know with injuries. But honestly, I'd argue it doesn't really matter. He's clearly already one of the great quarterbacks we have ever seen. Ever seen. And to act like just because you have one shitty game, it's like, oh, see, it's overrated, not Tom Brady. Yeah, he was not Tom Brady. Tom Brady won 7 fucking of these things. 7 of them. Went to 10. Like, it's pretty nuts. For Patrick Mahomes to go to 10 Super Bowls, he'd have to go to 5 more. Like, it's pretty crazy. We're not seeing the Patriot dynasty probably happen again because that thing went from 2001 to 2018. So for Mahomes to match that, it'd have to go from the 18 season basically to the mid-2030s. I'm not sure that's happening with the same coach who's already in his mid-60s. But, like, sometimes you just got to tip your cap. Like, it's been an incredible run. They have earned all the hype. Why? Because they took down everyone in their path. And in the AFC, you're facing some of the most talented quarterbacks we've ever seen. And whenever I see, like, well, people are going to start catching them. People are going to catch up to the Chiefs. What is going to happen now? I go, well, here's the thing. The other teams in the AFC are also paying their quarterbacks an I can't even speak, an astronomical amount of money. Sometimes when you get that flu, it still messes with your brain. Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow. Google their contracts. They're all huge. So their biggest foes in the AFC are teams that don't have rookie quarterbacks, that don't have some huge flexibility. And a lot of those teams have other high price guys on the team. So a lot like Kansas City, like you don't just have unlimited runway to sign guys because you have allocated cash into two or three players at really, really high numbers. Well, you go, there are two teams in the AFC, two playoff teams that have rookie quarterbacks. We go, okay, Denver, Sean Payton, Bo Nix. They still are eating a large chunk of dead cap money next year because of Russell Wilson. And like, I'm sorry, Bo Nix isn't even remotely on any of those other guys I just listed level. And CJ, who had a down season, is going to have a lot to prove next year. So, and the other thing is they clearly need to improve their offensive line, and we'll see what happens with their offensive coordinator in terms of like, does it work out or not? You never know. So I just think everyone needs to pump the brakes on the Chiefs. We have seen in other sports, it's pretty rare for like Michael Jordan was 6 for 6, never lost. A lot of other greats get to championships and get worked. Happened to Peyton Manning, happened to John Elway. I remember it happened to Kobe and Shaq. Google the Detroit Pistons. It happened to Kobe and Pau Gasol. Google the big three Boston Celtics. Sometimes you get there and you get your ass kicked. Like this is not abnormal. This is actually kind of consistent what usually happens in pro sports every once in a while. Like the big bad wolf, the top dog, loses. It's pretty rare that like Joe Montana, Tiger Woods, when they get into the arena and when they got a chance, they always want it. The Chiefs are actually much more like some of these other teams. Now you can give me the point differential, the difference of them or the Giants. I don't know. I mean, what I remember about the Giants beating the Patriots is they beat them twice. Close game, blowout. Like, who cares? You lost the game, right? Now, is it easier to stomach? I'd argue it's easier to stomach getting your ass kicked because at least, especially in that game, I mean, it was over before halftime. Then, like, ask Patriot fans about those two losses to the Giants. Like, those are hard. Ask Seattle about the Malcolm Butler pick. Like, that's something you never forget. Chiefs, you'll forget this game pretty quick. Week one can't get here fast enough. So I'm not trying to simp here for Andy and Mahomes, but everyone's acting like it's just over. Give me a break. Some other things in the National Football League. I I think the Deebo thing's interesting because at this point in time, given how he's played the last couple of years, some of the injuries had, he's a more famous player than he is a productive player. And he also makes a lot of money. So the reports last week that in his exit meeting, he asked for a trade. And a lot of people that cover the 49ers said it's like someone trying to break up with their significant other before their significant other breaks up with them. A lot of people thought that Deebo Samuel would have been cut or traded before the season even ended. Not like during 2024, but like as the Niners season was unraveling, it was like, well, Deebo's not going to be on the team next year. Honestly, that conversation started happening last year when they drafted Ricky Pearsall in the first round. So you got a first round receiver. They were like dead set on paying uh, Brandon Ayuk, which they ended up doing, and then his leg snapped midway through the season. They were in contract negotiations with George Kittle. They have Jawan Jennings, who's one of the best third wide receivers in the league, under contract. And in theory, Christian McCaffrey comes back from an injury. So, like, yeah, Debo's was kind of going to be the odd man out. The problem is, I don't see what his value is. And we talked about this with Cooper Kupp. When you're an older player and you've had some injuries and you make a lot of money, it is difficult to trade you. Now, Deebo, like Cooper Cup, they have been major figures on winning teams. So there are going to be a lot of teams that want to bring in that guy that just knows how to win and knows how to compete and is not scared of the moment. So I think there is going to be value in Deebo, uh, but I don't know how much. And I think you're looking at a guy getting traded for a fifth or sixth round pick. Jed York also mentioned at the Super Bowl, a lot of owners go there. It's time to mix with the other owners and corporate sponsors, and it's kind of like everyone's rubbing elbows with everybody, kind of glad handed and scratching each other's back, and just a lot of good to see you, good to see you. Thanks for paying us. What do you need? So he was quoted essentially. I think he ran into Brock Purdy's agent as well. Like, this contract is going to happen. And I would imagine this contract probably happens in the next 2 or 3 weeks. The only thing that's going to be fascinating is, like, what are the actual numbers? But he's going to get paid, and he's going to get paid a lot of money. And this franchise is going to go as he goes. So, like, if this franchise is going to continue to be good, I've said it over and over, this draft is huge for them. Look at the Eagles. When they had the draft of Jalen Carter, they were drafting high. So when the Eagles 2024 draft, I guess it would have been 2023 draft, they had the ninth pick because of a previous trade that they got Jalen Carter. Well, their first two picks were Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith. So part of drafting high is you can take advantage of it in every round. And I think when you look at the 49ers, like, they have the 11th pick. That also means they have a high pick in the second round. So I'm not expecting them to come out of this draft with Jalen Carter. He's not, there is no Jalen Carter in this draft. Maybe Abdul Carter becomes some version of like Micah Parsons, but he's not going to be there at 11. I mean, the only reason Jalen Carter was there at 9 was because of the incident that happened in the with the car crash and people dying, right? But if the Niners are going to maintain a high level of play, like, I don't know if you've seen some of the highlights Brian Baldinger has put out. Nolan Smith looked like a fucking dominant football player in that Super Bowl. And he was making plays all down the stretch of the season, definitely in the playoffs. So if you're going to pay your quarterback a lot of money, and he's not going to be like some all-time great player, because he's not, you need your team to be good. And to me, for the 49ers, it starts this April with the draft. Can I tell you about my friends at Via? I don't know about you, but I love me some CBD. I know a lot of you guys love yourself some THC, and that's where my friends come in. Here's the thing. I don't sleep that well, so these Dream gummies, they just have a little hint of THC, 5 milligrams. You can go up to 100 milligrams. You can go zero CBD. You can go up to 100 milligrams of CBD. Control what you take. So if you're 21 plus, check out our link to Via's website in the description and use the code JOHN for 15% off. And if you're new to Via, you'll get a free gift of your choice. Like I said, made in America, all organic, just fantastic stuff. I've been using it now, I think, for almost a year. I take one of these Dream gummies definitely during the week, Monday through Friday, so I sleep well rested to podcast. And if you're big on THC, you can control it. Go up to 100 milligrams. If you don't like it, you can have 0 milligrams, just have a little CBD. So, like I said, if you're 21, check out the link to Via in our description. Use the code JOHN. Receive 15% off. And if you're new to Via, get a free gift of your choice. After your purchase, when they ask where you heard about them, tell them we sent you. Support the show. Enhance your everyday with Via. A lot of takes on the halftime show. My overall opinion on is this. I think Kendrick Lamar is probably more famous on the internet and with younger people than like those people realize on the outside with normal people, especially older people. When I think of like 2022, when LA had the Super Bowl, and it was Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Eminem, and 50 Cent. Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg, you could argue, had two of, if not the two most important rap slash hip hop albums in the history of the genre, in the Chronic and Doggy Style. Doggy Style, I think, was the second or third CD I ever purchased as a kid. It still to this day is, I would say, banger for banger, as good of a CD that's ever been made in the history of music. I'd put it ahead of the Chronic, and the Chronic was sweet. But like those guys had been famous at the time of that performance for 30 plus years. Eminem, because he's a white guy rapping, is like one of the most unique talents in the history of America. And obviously, 50 Cent was just an all time rocket ship and very mainstream. I would say and listen, I loved rap and hip hop growing up, and I listened to it all through college. I would say the last 10 plus years, I'm not as locked in and don't like it as much. I kind of find out who things are through the internet. I enjoy, I wouldn't say I'm like a Drake loyalist, but I know way more about Drake than I do Kendrick Lamar. And I also think Drake is way more famous than Kendrick Lamar, even though they're viewed as rivals and they've had this beef. The other thing is, I remember, I don't know if you watched this, but a couple years ago, Kanye and Drake did this concert at in Los Angeles. I think it was at the Coliseum, and it was on like Amazon Prime. I remember watching it. It was like unreal. Drake is an awesome performer. He also, like, part of Kendrick, like his style. When people keep saying I didn't know what he was saying, I would say the average human being like doesn't know many Kendrick songs. And by all accounts, he didn't play most of his most popular songs. I also think like this beef the two have going, because people are on Twitter and a lot of media people are, I think it feels a lot bigger. And I'm not saying that people didn't talk about it, but like back to Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre, they were part of a national beef that literally everyone knew about. People ended up getting killed because of it. I don't know, two of the greatest rappers in the history of music in Biggie and Tupac. So I just think that we overrated like how popular and mainstream this guy was. And like it didn't do much for me. I thought it was kind of boring. I don't really know many of his songs, but like I just look back to a couple years ago, like universally Dr. Dre and that performance in Los Angeles was just awesome. We also have followed those guys' careers for decades. And I think the average person, especially in like sports media, especially a younger guy who's like really into the Drake Kendrick Lamar beef, thinks Kendrick is like way more famous than he actually is. It'd be like Jared Goff walking into a room and then Tom Brady and Peyton Manning walking into a room. So I think it was a weird pick to begin with. I think it would have been way easier to, I don't know, go like Lil Wayne, Cash Money, and Master P out there in New Orleans. But I'd be honest, I seen a lot of this like, oh, Drake, how does he ever recover from this? All he has to think is like, I would have been way better as a halftime show. And he's probably right. Couple other quick stories. Matt Patricia interviewing with Ohio State for their defensive coordinator position. Kind of crazy that Ohio State wins the Natty. They lose Chip Kelly. They lose their defensive coordinator. Chip Kelly, understandable. He got $6 million a year, goes to the Raiders. Couldn't turn down. I mean, he was making $2.5 million. They're going to offer me $6 in Vegas. I'm there. The losing the defensive coordinator to Penn State was a little weird, but I maybe there's more to the story that I haven't seen yet. Obviously, he got paid a lot of money, but you would think like Ohio State is every bit as, I mean, it's literally we beat Penn State all the time, but he's gone. So Patricia, there aren't any NFL defensive coordinator jobs open, and all signs point to Kellen Moore, who officially became the head coach today, going with Brandon Staley, who's his guy. Um, I think that'd be an interesting fit for Patricia, who I don't know is known as the biggest personality, who I think has really tried a lot like Belichick to kind of show his personality more. Would imagine he would want that job, one, because you can do good things there. You get loaded, your roster is full of NFL players, and two, they pay you a lot of money. Okay, it's now time for the chasing challenges segment. that spotlights the biggest hurdles faced by athletes, teams, and organizations. These segments draw parallels between the resilience of sports figures and the innovative mindset of business leaders. Just as athletes push boundaries and redefine what's possible, business decision makers navigate complex challenges with Microsoft's AI solutions, simplified cloud and data management, and trustworthy AI. By showcasing the challenger mindset, these segments reinforce that Microsoft empowers visionaries to tackle their biggest challenges with confidence, speaking new ideas, and driving impactful change. I'll never forget, I think NFL Films, they had followed Belichick and the Patriots around in like 2009 or 2010. And it was the final game of the season. They were playing the Ravens in the playoffs, and they were getting killed. And Belichick and Brady are standing right next to each other. And Belichick's just talking to him like, we just got to get better. I got to do a better job. I got to bring in better players. And it was right around the transition of when they started getting rid of the Randy Mosses, the Wes Welkers, and they kind of changed to their new group. Gronkowski, Edelman, McCourty, and those guys, Hightowers, and those guys became basically the finishing part of their dynasty over the next 6, 7, 8 years. And I think with the Chiefs, you get your ass kicked like that. Everyone is going to keep gunning for you in the AFC. You kind of got to take a step back, and it's not as difficult. Like the Chiefs don't have a motivational problem. Like their guys, especially their lead player, is just a motivated individual. But from a team building standpoint, it's like, what do we got to do? How do we take what just happened? And this season was for a season where they won 15 games and were in the Super Bowl was not as smooth as some of their previous years. It's like, how do we improve? Not how do we make improvements on the margins, but like, do we need to make something big happen? Do we need to take a big swing for the fence? Do we need to make a dramatic change? Because they've done that over the years. A couple years ago, when they lost to the Cincinnati Bengals, what did they do that offseason? They traded Tyreek Hill. When they lost to the Patriots back in the day, what did they do? They fired Bob Sutton and they went to get Steve Spagnuolo. So one thing I know about Andy Reid and Brett Veach is like they embrace adversity and they'll figure out a way to do something big because I've already texted with some people in the operation. They said, hey, we're already on to next season, and that's the mindset in that operation. And over the next month, I don't think any team will be as aggressive in trying to make a change that not only puts them right back in the situation, but gives them an opportunity to hoist another Lombardi, where I bet they feel like right now it's like we were close, but we actually weren't that close because we just got beat by multiple touchdowns in the Super Bowl and we're down like 100-0 at halftime. So I think the Chiefs sometimes, I think it's widely agreed upon that you only learn so much from success. Where you really learn is through adversity and failure. Look at the Eagles. Last year, the way the season ended, they lost all those games. They got their butt kicked in the playoffs, and they kind of had to hit the reset button. And they changed a bunch of players on defense. They changed a bunch of coordinators, and it really paid dividends. And I think the Chiefs are going to have to do, it's probably not going to be as big of a wholesale change last year as the Eagles, but they're going to have to make some personnel moves that, people be like, damn, they really did that. And I think that's what it takes sometimes to turn the thing around. That's it for this week's Chasing Challenges. Remember, Microsoft's AI solutions empower you to take bold steps and make informed decisions, sparking new ideas to help drive your business forward. With Microsoft as your trusted partner, you can navigate your journey with confidence, finding innovative solutions and reaching new possibilities. Visit Microsoft.com/challenges to learn more.